After spending time exploring the Elkmont area, the Ghost Town, the Wonderland Hotel, and discovering what still remains there, as well as learning about the cool backstory of the Little River Railroad Company before the formation of the Great Smoky Mountains National Park, of course, our interest was heightened. The next logical step to fulfill our thirst for even more knowledge about that time period was a stop into the Little River Railroad and Lumber Company Museum, found in Townsend, Tennessee.
Portable steam engines such as this were used in the backwoods to power portable sawmills. Although the Little River Lumber Company never owned one of these, many of the contractors during the early days of logging used them. This must be where they put the coal at.
This is the actual site that the Little River Lumber Company sawmill stood on. Old W.B. Townsend and his 150 miles of railroad tracks that ran through the Smokies delivered over 560 million feet of timber that would be sawed right here at the mill.
But this is exactly how the Little River Lumber Company would haul the logs and the timbers out of the Elkmont area.
And that right there is the star of the show. That's Shea engine number 2147, a 70-ton Class C locomotive built all the way back in 1909.
You can walk up these stairs over here and go look inside. But I guess this is where the conductor would have controlled the locomotive. Like this at one time was like a cutting edge way of transportation, which it's still used today. It's just been modernized, you know? Shea engines are a special kind of locomotive specifically made to pull heavy loads up steep hills and around sharp curves.
It did its duty for the Little River Lumber Company from 1932 to 1935 and is the last remaining Shea engine from the Little River era to not be wrecked or scrapped.
That looks old.
Yeah, it's like rusted.
It's got something over here. What is this? American Hoist and Derrick Company, St. Paul, Minnesota. This machine is the property of American Hoist and Derrick Company. Definitely has seen better days. All right, so here it is. So it says it's a log loader. Steam-driven log loaders were used by the Little River Lumber Company for most of its history. They operated on a set of rails on top of flat cars and rolled along the length of the train, filling up the cars with logs as they went. Look at this. Look what man created. These mechanical cogs powering a unit like this must have been quite a feat of innovation to have created something like this and taken man one step closer to the modern age. Look at this. It's crazy. You just look inside of there and you're just like, how does the human mind even begin to like calculate how to construct something like this? And it actually looks like it says right there, the Little River Railroad Company.
This would be great exercise. You have like a
Little act of balance.
railroad.
Yeah, let me see if I got my balance on the railroad. That's yeah, I'm better off on this one. These railroads are actually original to the Little River Railroad Company way back in the day. I guess reseated here at the museum location in Townsend. It's pretty neat to know that you're walking along a railroad track that is dated and has so much history that rode right over it.
It's important to know that these historical grounds and the museum itself offer free admission to the public. A real gift from the Smokies and a great way to get away from the commotion of the main tourist areas.
Definitely something you're going to want to come by and check out if you're in Townsend or in Gatlinburg or Pigeon Forge. And not exactly sure what this is, but maybe it was some sort of tool that switch the tracks over. Yeah, I believe that is what that is. They would wind this and it would switch over the track position over here somehow. As you can see right here is the track converges.
There's a lot of history here that can be unveiled to curious minds. Stopping in to get a closer look could spawn a passion for forming a deeper connection with the past and how it all began here.
And right here is the old restoration shop replica from the original Townsend locomotive shop. It says inside is the boardroom as well as space to work on various restoration projects.
Before we headed inside the museum, I wanted to get a closer look at the rustic railroad water tank seen at the entrance of the museum grounds.
And this is the railroad water tank. It says, this is the water tank that provided water for the community of Walland. It has been restored to resemble a typical water tower used by railroads during the steam age. Steam locomotives were refilled by a drop-down spout mounted to the side of the tower that fed into either a tender behind the locomotive or a tank mounted onto the boiler. All right, so let's walk into the museum. And from what I've seen, there's a lot of historical photos from the Little River Lumber Company and the Little River Railroad Company from long ago.
Back then, visitors purchasing the Elkmont special tickets that we mentioned in the first two vlog episodes were granted access to ride the Little River Railroad into the early resort areas that ran along the Little River. They would come to various train depot stops along their scenic journey. This is one of them.
This is the original Walland Depot, and it served the junction of the Little River and Southern Railroads for almost 4 decades. This was where passengers could catch or change trains. It was located near the current Walland post office until it was relocated to this site.
The Walland Depot actually houses the museum here, a little building with a lot of neat history inside. The building to the left of it was the original post office in the town of Elkmont. It's now the museum's gift shop. When you stop in for a visit, be sure to buy a little something. It helps to support the museum.
We can learn all about Townsend in there? We're headed that way. Headed there. Old Walland Depot. And here is the Elkmont excursion locomotive. Look at all the tourists coming probably from Knoxville. Backyard photo of the Appalachian Club. Probably some of its members. And this is an original observation car from the early days of the Little River Railroad Company.
The museum showcases lots of great information pertaining to the early days of the logging operations, not just in the Elkmont area, but also the other nearby logging towns that were a vital part of the Little River Lumber Company in those days. The train had stops in Elkmont and Wonderland Park, of which we covered in the last 2 vlog episodes. But it also had depot stops in Walland, Maryville, Kinsel Springs, Townsend, and Line Springs. A lot of these towns built resorts and hosted thousands of visitors during summer vacations to their areas.
Just imagine how hard these men work to bring all that to life. Just groups of men. Talk about a day's worth of labor. It says the man with a bucket is Dave Moore. Where's the man with the bucket? Oh, right here. This man's got a bucket. This must be Dave Moore. And here is something extremely interesting. This was the swinging bridge, and it says It was one of the greatest challenges encountered while logging. With no predictable way to lay rails up the creek, the Little River built what may be the only known swinging bridge railroad. So you can actually see this. There was no way to do it but make it a swinging bridge. So this would have been probably extremely dangerous. But it does say no locomotive ever crossed the bridge, but a Sari Parker incline machine was hauled up the bridge by using number 148 and some heavy block and tackle.
I couldn't help but ponder about the photographer who captured these unbelievably significant snapshots that would help preserve and reveal the intense labor it took to build the railroad system and all the strenuous daily logging efforts that took place throughout the mountainous backwoods of the Great Smokies.
And if you were a log loader, this would have probably been a familiar tool. This is actually a set of log tongs. And you can see the log tongs right there, put to work, wrapped around that tree trunk right there.
Of course, their efforts and accomplishments also came with a harsh reality and a fair share of tragedy, as recorded by photographic history. As I looked around the museum, I stumbled across some other fascinating relics from the old Wallen Depot station.
Look at this, the official guide of the railways. Tell me that book's not old. An old can of Prince Albert crimp cut tobacco. And there is a Shay locomotive like the one we saw outside from that era. Look at this. This is the last 3 logs at the mill. July 5th, 1939. The end of an era. Later in time, the Elkmont was actually taken over by the Civilian Conservation Corps, and it was there for a handful of years, building the infrastructure of the park system. And that's the barracks of the men who worked there during that time. They eventually built a road in replacement to the old rail system. And this picture right here looks like that very road after rails removed. And there is the founder of the Little River Railroad and Lumber Company, W.B. Townsend.
Log loaders, logging trains, old property maps, skidders.
Here's a cool little find, a old railroad oil can.
Weathered tools of the trade, all spread throughout this little museum that seals away a lot of the authentic artifacts and chronicled imagery from the early eastern Tennessee backcountry. With 3 compelling discovery vlogs under our belt, exploring the roots of how the old Elkmont Ghost Town, the resort clubs, the Little River Railroad and Lumber Company, and the Great Smoky Mountains National Park came to be. Our multi-part history tour on this topic was finally coming to an end. But I had a good sense the road ahead would be full of even more spellbinding discoveries and explorations. Let's just say of a whole different caliber. Wait till you see what's next. It's gonna be fun.